Okay, so I got everybody to work on tissue paper, and you can see there's an example of the tissue paper one. Now probably you found the tissue paper really successful, so it really adheres well. It's very thin, so it's easy to get a good quality print, but it's super flimsy and it's not very practical as a print. So there's a couple of things that you can do to that to improve it, and one of them is just simply to carefully cut the image out more carefully than I'm doing. And I'm cutting this flush. So you could carefully cut the image out, and you could then use a glue stick to glue stick that down onto a quality piece of paper. So sticking it on the back and down onto paper. So you would get a firmer surface, and you could use a really nice quality printmaking paper and that would come up really well. So if you're having trouble, and because we haven't got a press, we can't use quality printmaking papers because they're not going to work out very well. So that's a bit of an issue. The next thing you could do is you could actually paint the surface, and I've just been working on this one here. So another one, and I've just been physically painting the back of the print. So that's the good side, and I've painted on the back side of the print, but because it's so thin, the watercolour will show through both sides, and that's a little bit wet there, doesn't matter. So it'll show through both sides. Now I could then glue that onto, this isn't quite big enough, let's see if I can find some paper.
How do you stop that from going all wrinkly when you're painting the back of it? Oh, I guess not.
It is pretty wrinkly. I don't know if you can see, like it's pretty wrinkly, but it hasn't curled up, which is good. I was a bit concerned that it might curl up, but it hasn't. And I was looking for some better glue stick. Somewhere in this mess is a glue stick, but I don't know where. So I'm just going to have to use this old dried up terrible glue stick. And this isn't really dry, so I would have left this to dry fully. So imagine this is completely dry. Now what I could then do is just put a surface of some description over the top of that just to protect it, and then I could use the Baron to really firmly adhere that to the surface. Now because my glue stick's old and terrible, where is my good glue stick? I'll just run downstairs and get a better glue stick. Hang on a sec. Quick, buddy.
No, I'm trying to think of paper. I think it's calligraphy paper. It's kind of mottled. Does anyone know what I'm talking about and what it's called? It's kind of got like a quite thin and got a mottly appearance to it.
Not washi.
I don't know. Maybe.
I've got some really, really thin paper that I did Japanese calligraphy on.
Yeah.
And it's called... Ooh, I'll have to see if I can dig it out later for you and see if it's got, if I can find out what it is.
Because I'm wondering if that sort of thing might be nice to print on, something with a bit of...
Yeah, like...
It's so cheap as well. You can buy like
Hoshu
packs from the Japanese shop.
Yeah, Hoshu paper, washi paper.
Rice paper? Is it called the rice paper?
Yeah, rice paper. Any of those are really good. Hoshu, washi, rice papers.
Rice paper, yeah.
Here's another one that I just did before.
Just a rice, R-I-C-E.
Oh, no, the Hoshi. Sorry.
Oh, H-O-S-H-I. So this is
Sorry, I missed that.
This is another one, H-O-S-H-I.
Okay, thank you.
So this is another one that I did before, which I did actually want to show you. I initially printed like this, and I didn't like all this stuff in here. It seemed a bit clumsy, so I took more out and left some on the left hand side, but carved away this stuff on the right hand side, and I think it's a bit improved. So anyway, that's just a simple little one. This is one that's on tissue paper, and I'll just show you how you can paint it. So it's very simple. You can just simply paint directly onto, and you don't have to worry about the edges. You can just kind of whack it on there because of the nature of it.
Because I was thinking if it was that rice paper or hoshi paper, that might be nice to do the watercolour on.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and really I just kind of want you to, this is something that you can experiment with that takes it a little bit further, and you can get some really lovely effects pretty easily. Now the only thing that you've got to be careful with is, I'm going to paint this bit here blue. I don't want to mix that. I'm going to have issues if I mix that up, so just be a bit cautious. Areas like that in there where potentially it might touch. So you get the basic idea there. I'll just put a bit of the blue on so you get the idea of that. It's a bit heavy. And don't put it on as heavily as that. Ideally, you'd probably put do the fish first, and then come back in and do the next section. Yep. So you get the basic idea, and then underneath that's going to look a bit stronger because you're going to see the black's going to be a bit stronger. So I'll finish that one off later. I did this one before of the print of the little girl, which I was just saying before we could, and we've got a couple of good prints of that one, so I'm happy with that now. I've carved away a bit more that in some spots that I wasn't happy with, so I can then glue this down. Just make sure that you turn it around the right way, so that, remember, the watercolour's going on the back, and you're then going to put that on the front. It's a bit crinkly, this one. I reckon you could almost iron it. I'll try it with this one first. So turn it over onto its back. You've got to be really careful that you don't tear or squish up the tissue paper. Do as I say, not as I do. And you also don't want big clumps of the glue. Now, surprisingly, glue stick is fantastic for this job. It's actually acid free, so it's a really good safe glue to be using. So I've just sat that on there. I'll put that over the top, and then this is just a nice flat area, so that should flatten it out pretty well. The other thing is you'd let it dry. I don't know whether mine was completely dry. Yeah, see, my ink wasn't completely dry, so it's stuck ever so slightly. But what's good is you wouldn't know that that wasn't printed on the paper. So there's nothing to indicate that that's actually another sheet of paper glued on. That's the that's the idea. With this one, this is a better quality piece of watercolour paper or printmaking paper. I don't know how this one will go because it is a bit crinkly, but we'll find out. Make sure you get the edges.
do work, or would that just make it all too messy?
Yeah, no, I think a glue stick's the best job because it's acid free. It's going to offer good protection. I think I would use this. Actually, there's some baking paper that might be better because it's a bit less. And I'm just going to get that firmed down first.
So
Actually, baking paper's good.
You're doing this on the front. You're putting glue on the front.
I'm putting glue on the back. So I've painted on the black, and then I've put the glue on the back, and then voila. So it's on a nice sheet of paper, and you wouldn't know that wasn't. It's a little bit rough and ready, but you know, you wouldn't know that was done any other way. Yeah. So I think that's a really cool technique. So you want to avoid this where it's wrinkly and I haven't covered the entire surface. I don't know if you can see, but there's bits where it's not covered. That was the old glue and it's quite wrinkly. You want to really put that glue on well and make sure that you adhere it well. The baking paper was perfect for doing that process because it didn't stick at all. But do be careful about it being dry enough. Like I'm rushing it just because I wanted to get you to see the technique. But I think that's a really nice technique. Depending on what your image is like, this is a really simple way of hand colouring. Equally, you could hand colour directly. I'm just looking for one that I wasn't that mad on. This one.
So, Tracy, the initial image that you were colouring and putting glue on was on a particular paper?
That was tissue paper. So that was the print on tissue. This is the horseshoe. This is the horseshoe paper. Now the thing with this is it's going to bleed. So on this paper, it's going to bleed out beyond the line because it's not what it's designed for. So that's not going to be great. The litho paper is going to hold, and the other thing is it's possible that this ink won't hold, but you can probably again do it from the back. So you can probably paint from the back, but I can see this is really bleeding through, so it's not staying firm. So you could paint that on the back as well. The ones on, just looking for one on litho paper. You never find it when you want it. The ones on litho paper you could do on the back as well, so long as you can see through it. Yeah, I think it'll be too thick. That'll be too thick. If it does show up, it'll be very pale, I would think. Yeah, so not really shown up, just ever so slightly. Not really. So that's no good, the litho paper. So you really got to be using, I think you need to use tissue paper or something very, very soft and light. So these kinds of tissuey, flimsy tissuey papers will be nice, but remember you're working on the back of the image, not the front. So working on the back of the image is really important. Whack the information down. Gosh, this is very bright. The good thing is you can go, like I can go over those legs. I don't have to be really careful. And I can also go over the edges because I can then cut them out when it's dry. So you don't have to have it cut out already. In some ways that's better because you can kind of go out here and not have to worry about that, because then you'll cut that stuff back. And then on the other side, that's looking good. So very simple technique that can just extend your ideas a little bit further and gives you something more to play with. Now remember that your play should be in your journal. So all these kind of testy play ones, they should all be just in the journal, and then the final ones that you're happy with should be kept out. So you know, I would have this one in the journal, but I would say, you know, inked up too lightly, too spotty, and you know, that would just be inside the journal. So down the track, when you're looking at these, you've got information there that you know that will help you with the amount of ink and so forth. So all of this stuff should be in the journal. The journal this year, they look very different because lots of it's digital. It's not how it would normally be. So normally that journal would be very much hand generated, and it'd be fun and loose, and you'd be loving working in your journal and become like a real sort of treat. So just keep that in mind, that it'd be great if you could use your journal as a fun place to explore ideas. What do you think of that technique? Do you like that technique?
Yeah, it's cool.
And the gluing down of images has got a name which is mostly associated with intaglio printing, which is like etching, and we'll do that next year. And that name is, and it's a lovely name, it's Shin collé. Shin collé. And it's a French word meaning, I think it means glue and you know, cutting and pasting basically.
How do you spell that, Tracy? I want to write it down.
Sure, Chine with a little umphalaga on the top of the E.
E, yeah.
Colle, Colle. 2 words. Shin collé. Actually, maybe the umphalaga is on the top of the collé, the E at the end of collé. Yeah. My French is terrible. It's non-existent, actually. So thoughts on that?
That's fun.
Yeah.
You know what people will be getting for their Christmas cards this year?
Exactly. Beautiful for cards. You know, really lovely for cards. Really simple way. And the good thing is that the prints on tissue are really easy to do. You know, they're the easiest of all the prints to actually produce. It does mean, like, I wouldn't do that one as one because I don't think that's going to work. You know, that's not going to work very well. That self-portrait, but this kind of stuff where it's fairly decorative anyway is probably going to work really well. So make sure you've done plenty, and I should test that one out. This is the baking
And
paper.
Tracy, sorry.
Yeah.
What is the type of paper that we use to stick this tissue paper on the top? What type of paper?
Yeah. Look, in an ideal world, I would have given you some printmaking papers to do that with, and I just didn't. I didn't think of it in the rush.
Can we put it in the photocopy paper? Just an ordinary.
Yeah, cartridge paper would be nice. You know, the cartridge paper would be nice because it's a bit heavier. So just have a look around at what you've got. The heaviest paper, you know,
watercolor paper.
like that's watercolor paper, and that's really nice. You know, that's really nice to have that kind of, you know, you can see that's watercolor paper, and it does look really nice on that. So I would recommend the watercolor paper, and you'll notice that I haven't cut that watercolor paper. I've torn it with a ruler. So when you tear it, you get a nice softened edge.
Thank you.
Does everyone know how to tear it? Have I shown you that before?
With a ruler?
With a ruler?
No. Is it you using the hand to back or front or something?
Yeah, so I'll just make a little space in this quagmire. Okay, so imagine I was cutting this bit of paper up. Whatever sort of ruler you're using. Of course, it would be measured. Yeah. And I might just cut this outside edge so you can see. So, really firmly holding there and then tearing back that way. But this would all be measured, of course. gives a, but what you don't want to do is this. Don't go to here and try to do it like this. Yeah, that's not going to work. Go the other way. And, oops, now I've made a bit of a muck up of it. I've got stuff underneath here. Yeah, like that. So always the smaller edge on the inside. Voila. So it just gives you a nice, nice piece of torn edge paper. That's most important if you're using printmaking papers or watercolour papers, and it'll give you a really authentic, authentic feel. Does anybody know why they tear papers? Anyone got any idea where that might have originated?
Before they had scissors.
No, but good thought. No. Any other?
More artistic feeling?
No. No, it's much more pragmatic than that.
Because you can do a bigger line, a bigger piece.
Nope. It was done. It was done because it authenticated. So when printmaking started, because the nature of printmaking means that you can do multiples of the same thing, people could also easily forge work by just printing it on like a commercial printing press. So what artists did was they tore the paper, which when you're using a commercial printing press, you're not using torn paper. You're using reams of cut paper with a guillotine. So they tore the paper, and that gave a clear authenticity. So you knew straight away that it was authentic and a genuine print because of that torn paper, and that's remained to this day. Because so these days, you could print, you could scan this and print it on a rag paper as an inkjet print, and then sell it off as a unique state print, which would be a fib. So it's a way of avoiding that. When I cut this out, I did a very dodgy job of cutting the outside of that. So you would want to make sure that you did a good job on that. Mine looks very dodgy. Okay. So I tried the baking paper, and the watercolour doesn't stick to it. It just beads on it, so you can't use the watercolour paper. So anyway, that gives you a few options. Remember, you're painting on the back, and then you're turning it over to the front, and you're sealing it that way. You can paint over the whole areas of the black if you want to. That's fine as well, and can work quite nicely too. So a couple of good little extension activities that you can maybe use with some of them. And it's kind of good to use some, with some of the ones. You might have one where you blurred the outside edge, out here might be all bird, or, you've moved it slightly. It's a good way of fixing. So have a go with some of the prints that you're not so, amazed about.